The padlock snapped open with a sound that felt too loud for the silence around me. 30 years of nightmares, and here I was again. Standing at the gates of Kestrel Ridge. The wind smelled like rain and ghosts. My husband's voice still echoed in my head. Standing at the gates of Kestrel Ridge. Eliza. Let it go. But he was gone 6 months now. And the land he swore was empty wasn't empty at all. My name is Eliza Calloway. I'm 61. And today I learned my marriage was a 30-year lie. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come with shouting, it comes dressed as love, wrapped in trust, and waiting 30 years to be found. When I was 26, I thought my life had already reached its peak, and waiting 30 years to be found. Nathan and I had just bought Kestrel Ridge Ranch, a stretch of Montana land wide enough to swallow our worries whole. It was a place of beginnings. The air smelled like hay and cedar, and my son Aiden's laughter carried across the fields like wind chimes. He was our firstborn, our miracle, the boy who made every morning worth waking up for. I can still hear him, 10 years old, shouting, "Mom, look, I can cast farther than Dad now." That morning, his 10th birthday, was all sunlight and frosting. I was in the kitchen, cutting strawberries for his cake, while Nathan oiled the tractor out back. Aiden had begged to fish before lunch. Just 15 minutes at the cove. The water's calm. "Mom, I'll stay near the dock," he promised. Those were the last words I heard him say. It happened so fast. So quietly. No scream. No splash I could have heard over the hum of the mixer. Just silence. A silence that still wakes me up some nights. When I found him, the lake was mirror still. The fishing pole half submerged. The paramedics said it was too late. I remember the smell of wet mud, the weight of his small body in Nathan's arms, the way the sheriff avoided my eyes when he asked questions. After the funeral, Nathan refused to sell the land. I wanted to burn it down. Every sound reminded me of him, the swing creaking in the wind, the hollow knock of boots on the porch. We fought for months, then stopped speaking altogether. One morning, I packed what was left of our life into the truck. Nathan didn't stop me. I drove us to Denver, me and our 3 surviving kids. Marcus, 13, Jenna, 9, and little Dylan, only 5. I never looked back at the ranch. Not once. In Denver, I became a teacher again. History felt safe. It was about other people's pain, not mine. I told my students that tragedy builds character, but I couldn't take my own advice. I buried the past under lesson plans and polite smiles. Nathan kept his practice, told me he had conferences, medical retreats, fishing weekends, 3 times a year. He said, I believed him. Because believing was easier than wondering what he did when I wasn't looking. Years passed in gray tones. Marcus grew ambitious, always trying to fix me. Jenna became my shadow, the caretaker, sharp and kind and tired before her time. Dylan, sweet. Dylan never stopped asking questions about his brother. What did Aiden like to eat? Why can't we visit him? I told him the ranch was gone, sold to strangers. I lied. Nathan and I became polite strangers sharing a bed. He'd touch my hand sometimes, but his eyes were always somewhere else on a memory, or maybe a promise I didn't know he'd made. Every time he left for a conference, I pretended not to notice the way his voice softened when he said goodbye, as if part of him stayed behind. I didn't know it then. But each of those trips was a return to Kestrel Ridge, to the lake where our son had died. I thought he was escaping our grief. I didn't realize he was building redemption. One winter, about 10 years after Aiden's death, Nathan came home with sawdust on his coat. I remember brushing it off absent-mindedly, not asking where it came from. He kissed my forehead, whispered, "You're sleeping better now." I nodded, because it was true. I'd finally stopped seeing Aiden's face every time I closed my eyes. What I didn't know was that Nathan had just finished building the first cabin on the ranch for a homeless veteran he'd found sleeping in our old barn. That veteran's name was Robert. I learned about him only months ago through the journals Nathan left behind. Robert had PTSD, nightmares so bad he couldn't stay in shelters. Nathan gave him a roof and purpose, said fixing the ranch helped them both heal. Soon more came. Another veteran. Then a mother and son fleeing an abusive husband. Then 2 brothers who'd lost everything in a fire. By the time I was lecturing my students about the Great Depression, Nathan was already feeding 12 people under our old barn roof. And all those years, I thought he was golfing in Seattle. There was one day I can't forget. Even though I didn't understand its meaning then, it was our 20th wedding anniversary. I'd planned a quiet dinner, but Nathan canceled at the last minute. "Emergency case," he said. He didn't come home that night. The next day, a postcard arrived in the mail. No address, no note, just a picture of a lake at sunrise. The handwriting on the back was smudged, but I could still make out the words. Still here, still trying. I assumed it was an inside joke, some poetic nonsense. Now I know it was from Kestrel Ridge. Another flash, one that cuts deeper. I'd been cleaning our attic and found a box of photographs Nathan had hidden. They were of the ranch. The fences repaired. The barn freshly painted. Strangers smiling in front of the farmhouse. I confronted him, shaking with confusion. "What is this?" "Nathan, are these stock photos?" He just said, "I'll explain one day," then took the box and left. That was 15 years ago. He never mentioned it again. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was done chasing answers that would only hurt me. But deep down, I knew something about his silence was keeping him alive, even as it hollowed me out. The last time I saw him alive was at Aiden's memorial in Denver, the small plaque we placed under a maple tree. Nathan laid down yellow flowers. Aiden's favorite color. "You ever think about going back?" I asked, surprising both of us. "To Montana." His eyes flickered just for a moment. "Every day," he said. Then he smiled sadly, kissed my cheek, and changed the subject. 6 months later, he was gone. Heart failure, the doctor said, peaceful, in his sleep. But when I opened his safe to handle his estate, there was something strange, a key with a tag that read Kestrel Ridge alongside it. A sealed envelope addressed to me in his handwriting. Inside was one line: "When you're ready to forgive, go home." Home. I'd sold that word long ago. And yet, 30 years later, here I am standing before the same gates I swore I'd never open again. The padlock rusted but not locked. The road not overgrown. Tire tracks in fresh dirt. Someone's been here. I didn't know it back then. But the past Nathan hid wasn't gone. It was waiting, breathing, thriving. When I first stepped beyond the gate, the air felt heavier, as if the land itself remembered me. The gravel crunched under my boots, and a strange mix of fear and nostalgia pressed against my chest. The house looked both familiar and foreign, wrapped in vines and time. On the porch rail, someone had carved new initials. M.A. The paint on the front door wasn't the same. It was brighter, fresh, and when I turned the handle, it opened without resistance. Inside, the scent hit me first. Cedar oil, stew, and wood smoke. Not abandonment, life. I froze in the doorway. my pulse hammering. A voice behind me said softly, "You must be Mrs. Calloway." She was in her late 50s, wearing an apron and a cross around her neck. Her eyes carried a calm that made me feel 12 years old. "I'm Marisol Alvarez," she said. Her eyes carried a calm that made me feel 12 years old. "Nathan told us you might come one day." My throat locked. She guided me inside, pouring tea as if we were old friends. The walls were lined with photographs, none of me, none of our children, but dozens of faces I'd never seen. Veterans, women with babies, kids in Halloween costumes. A wooden plaque read Kestrel Ridge Community, founded by Dr. Forty, Nathan Calloway. Itenjobai Joshalo. I remember whispering, "What is this place?" Marisol smiled sadly. "Redemption. I think I wandered through the rooms like a trespasser in my own life. Nathan's study was exactly how he used to keep it, except newer. Tidia. A corkboard covered with letters and photos. Thank you. Dr. Nathan, you saved my son. You gave me back my life." My heart clenched. He hadn't been escaping me, he'd been saving others. Marisol led me outside to the barn. "He rebuilt it himself," she said, tracing her fingers along the wood. "Started with one man who had nowhere to go. Then more came." Her voice softened. "He said he was doing it for a boy named Aiden." I couldn't speak. The wind lifted my hair, and somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. I turned there, by the lake. A group of kids were learning to swim under a sign that read, "Aiden's Cove." I staggered closer, watching their instructor, Dylan, my son. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He looked older, sunburned, but happy. I hadn't seen that expression on his face since before rehab. He spotted me from across the water and froze. The whistle in his hand slipped. Then he smiled slow, disbelieving, and ran to me. "Mom!" I couldn't answer. I just reached out and touched his cheek, as if to prove he was real. Behind him, Marisol said softly, "He's been here for months. Nathan brought him back last year." It hit me like lightning. Nathan had been gathering us all back, piece by piece, without any of us realizing. That night, we ate in the dining hall. Long tables, mismatched chairs, the smell of garlic and laughter filling the air. They called it the gratitude meal. Every person said something they were thankful for. When it was my turn, I stood up, shaking. "I'm thankful." I hesitated. The words felt foreign in my mouth. "I'm thankful this place still remembers us." Marcus arrived 2 days later. His SUV roared down the dirt road like an insult. He slammed the door, sunglasses still on. "Tied too tight. You can't be serious." "Mom," he said before I could speak, "you're actually living here. With squatters." Marisol tried to greet him kindly. He brushed past her. "Where's the deed?" "We're listing this property. You'll thank me when it sells for $25 million. But Marisol didn't flinch. She placed a folder on the table. Inside were Nathan's signatures, trust, deeds, conservation easements, land covenants, every inch of this ranch already bound to the community he built. Marcus's face went pale. "He gave it away." Arthur Bell, the old lawyer, stepped forward. "He didn't give it away, son. He preserved it." Marcus's jaw tightened. "This is theft," I whispered. "No, Marcus. This is love." That night, the storm came in from the mountains. Rain battered the roof as I sat in Nathan's old chair, reading through his letters. 360 of them, one for each month he kept the ranch alive. The early ones were short. repaired the dock today. Fixed the swing. Still can't look at the lake. Later ones grew longer. Robert's nightmares are easing. Marisol says the garden's ready for harvest. I think Aiden would like that. And then the final entry. Dated 6 months before his death. Eliza, I know you'll find this when I'm gone. Forgive me for leaving twice, the first time in body, the second in truth. But if you ever come home, you'll see why I had to. The next morning, I walked to the lake. Mist clung to the surface, and the rebuilt dock stretched out like a bridge between then and now. At the edge, I noticed something carved into the wood. Aiden's safe place. My knees gave out. I fell, crying for the first time in years, not out of guilt, but out of the unbearable kindness of what Nathan had done. Dylan found me there. He fixed it. Mom, he whispered, all of it. The dock, the ranch, the people. I looked up at him. Then it's our turn now. I didn't know it then, but that promise to keep his work alive would tear our family apart before it healed us. Because 2 days later, Marcus found the emails. The side deal. The money? Marcus found the emails. No matter how pure, always leaves someone feeling betrayed. By the 3rd day, peace had become dangerous. The kind of peace that trembles right before it breaks. Marcus walked the property like a man patrolling enemy lines. Every time he looked at the cabins, his jaw flexed. Do you know what this land is worth? Mom, he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the morning fog. You could retire anywhere. Paris? Maui. Not waste your life on Dad's charity project. I didn't answer. The wind carried the sound of hammers from the greenhouse where Dylan worked. The rhythm of rebuilding. I wanted to believe it meant something. At dinner that night, the long table was filled, Marisol at one end, veterans at the other. Dylan laughing with Theo and little Ruby. When it came time for the gratitude ritual, Marisol turned to Marcus. Would you like to share something you're thankful for? He scoffed. Sure. I'm thankful my father didn't live to see what his property turned into. The silence was instant and suffocating. Forks froze midair. I'm thankful my father didn't live to see what his property turned into. Dylan slammed his glass down. You don't get it. Marcus, Dad didn't lose this place. He saved it. Marcus laughed bitterly. By giving it away, Arthur Bell, the old lawyer, stepped in quietly. Doctor, Calloway established an irrevocable charitable trust. The ranch isn't his or yours to sell. It belongs to the foundation now. Marcus turned to me, betrayal flashing in his eyes. You knew. I shook my head. I found out the same time you did. His voice cracked with disbelief. You're really okay with this? With Dad lying to you for 30 years? It was a question I didn't know how to answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't okay. But I was starting to understand. Later that night, I stood alone in Nathan's study. The rain had started again, tapping against the window in slow, steady beats. On his desk was a ledger: receipts, transfers, donation lists. My husband had sold a portion of the north parcel for $3 million and funneled every cent into solar panels, hydroponic systems, and medical care for veterans. He hadn't hidden money. He'd multiplied it into mercy. Still, guilt is a stubborn ghost. It doesn't leave just because you finally know the truth. Marcus spent the next morning calling lawyers. Jenna arrived by noon, exhausted, her heels sinking into the mud. He called me 10 times. Mom, she sighed, says you're being manipulated. When she saw the ranch, though, her expression changed. Children were painting birdhouses under the porch, though the barn doors were open, sunlight flooding through like forgiveness. Jenna whispered, "Dad built this." "Yes," I said, "and he did it alone." We walked together to the memorial garden where a small wooden arch read Aiden's Cove. Jenna traced her fingers over the letters. "He carried this for 30 years, she murmured. No wonder he looked so tired at the end. That night, the wind shifted cold. The ranch dogs barked at something unseen. I found Marcus in the barn office. The wind shifted cold. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Looking for proof Dad wasn't a saint. Something I can use to reverse this joke of a trust." "There is no proof," I said softly. He turned, eyes blazing. "You think love fixes everything. He left us. He left you. And you're just forgiving him because it's convenient." The words hit like stones. I wanted to tell him he was right, that forgiveness is never convenient, that it costs everything. I wanted to tell him he was right, that forgiveness is never convenient. But before I could, Sheriff Tate stood at the door, hat in hand. "Ma'am," he said, "I got an automated notice about a listing activity from this address. Some sort of digital alert tied to a property sale. Protocol says I check it out." Marcus stiffened. "That's insane." "We didn't." I froze. My stomach dropped. The photos I'd taken days earlier, the ones I'd uploaded to a real estate site just to remember the place, had triggered the alert. Nathan had left safeguards in place. If the land ever entered the market, the sheriff would be notified to protect it. Marisol appeared behind him, calm as ever. "It's fine. Sheriff, no one's selling anything tonight." But Marcus's face had already gone crimson. "He planned this." He spat. "Even after death, he's controlling us." As he stormed out, Jenna whispered, "He's not the only one haunting this place." Mom. She was right. The ghosts here wore our faces. The next morning broke with pale light and the smell of damp hay. I woke to the sound of raised voices outside. Marcus and Dylan were at it again, their words slicing through the thin dawn air. "You think feeding horses makes you better than me," Marcus shouted, his coat half-buttoned, his phone flashing in his hand. Dylan's tone was steady but sharp. "No. I think it makes me less empty." When I stepped outside, both fell silent, though the tension hung like frost. I tried to speak calmly. "Enough. Both of you. This isn't what your father wanted." Marcus turned, voice dripping with bitterness. "You keep saying that, Mom, but he's not here." "Is he? He left a bunch of strangers and some legal tricks. That's what you're protecting." Dylan's jaw clenched. "He protected what mattered. You're just mad you didn't get paid first." Marcus lunged, but I stepped between them. "Stop," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Do you even hear yourselves?" The wind swallowed the silence that followed. Marcus walked away toward the cabins, his phone pressed to his ear again. Jenna stood nearby, arms folded, watching him with wary eyes. That afternoon, she found me in Nathan's office, holding a printout. "Mom, you should see this." It was an email chain between Marcus and a representative of Oryx Mining, an attachment marked finder's fee. $500,000. Upon sale. My chest tightened. He was in on it. Jenna nodded, whispering, "He probably thought he could help you by brokering the deal. But this is fraud." I sank into Nathan's chair, staring at the screen. Outside, laughter echoed from the barn, Dylan teaching Ruby how to braid a horse's mane. The sound made the betrayal heavier. Somehow, that night, I called a family meeting. We sat around the long dining table again, though the air was nothing like before. Even the fire seemed hesitant to burn. Marisol poured coffee. Arthur sat near the end, silent witness. I looked at Marcus. We need to talk about this. I slid the printed email across the table. He didn't deny it. He just stared at the page. Then up at me. I was trying to save you. Mom, you're being manipulated by a bunch of nobodies living off Dad's guilt. Jenna's voice was sharp. No. Marcus, you were trying to save your bank account. Marcus's hand slammed the table. Don't talk to me like that. You don't get it. Dad built his empire on a lie. And you're all too blind to see it. Arthur finally spoke. Your father didn't build an empire, son. He built refuge. Marcus's eyes glistened not with sorrow, but rage. Refuge doesn't pay bills. It doesn't bring Aiden back. The name hit the room like thunder. Everyone froze. Even Dylan looked up from his cup, his eyes wet. I whispered, nothing brings Aiden back. The words trembled, but they steadied me. And I think your father finally understood that. That's why he spent his life trying to save others, because he couldn't save our boy. Marcus stood, shaking. You all want to worship him. Fine, but I'm done living in his shadow. He stormed out, the door slamming so hard the windows rattled. After he left, and silence settled like dust, Dylan exhaled, whispering, he'll come around. But he didn't. 2 nights later, I woke to headlights outside. Marcus was loading his SUV, the taillights glowing red against the dark. I walked out barefoot into the cold. Marcus, I called. Don't do this. He paused, hand on the door. Dad owed us the truth. Mom, you owe us more than forgiveness. Then he was gone. The next morning, a package arrived from the bank. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name and Nathan's handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. It wasn't a letter. It was a USB drive labeled, "For when they come home." I plugged it into Nathan's old laptop. A video began his face. Older, worn, eyes red from crying. He sat by the lake, the sun sinking behind him. If you're watching this, Eliza, he began softly. Then they've found me out. You, our children, this place. There's something you all deserve to know. It wasn't your fault, Eliza. It was mine. There's something you all deserve to know. I promised I'd watch him, but I got distracted fixing the tractor. I heard the splash too late. You blamed yourself all these years for a lie I let you believe because I was too weak to face you. My breath caught. Nathan's voice cracked. I built this place not to atone but to keep him alive in others. I just couldn't save him from me. When the video ended, I couldn't move. The truth hollowed me and filled me all at once. Jenna found me hours later, tears already streaming down her face. Mom, we have to show Marcus this. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said, but not in secret. Not in anger. We'll show everyone. The whole community. If Dad hid this truth for 30 years, then we'll make sure the world knows why. I didn't know it then. But that decision, pressing play in front of them all, would change every life tied to Kestrel Ridge. Because sometimes redemption doesn't come quietly. Sometimes it needs to be witnessed. The night of the gathering felt unreal, too still. Too expectant. Like the air itself was holding its breath. The barn had been transformed into a hall. Every string light flickering softly against the beams Nathan once sanded by hand. People filled the long tables, veterans, mothers, children, all of them waiting for something they didn't yet understand. At the far end stood a small projector and a white sheet pinned to the wall. I held the USB drive in my palm, cold and trembling. Jenna was beside me, her hand firm on my shoulder. Dylan sat across from us, his eyes red from tears he hadn't yet let fall. When Marcus entered, the sound of his boots on the wood made every head turn. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept since the night he left. He didn't speak, just folded his arms and stared at me. Jaw locked tight. I took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Nathan left something behind, a truth he couldn't carry into the next life, and I think it's time we all hear it. No one moved. Even the fire seemed to shrink, as if afraid of what was coming. I pressed play. The projector flickered, and suddenly Nathan was there, alive again, in grainy light, sitting by the lake at sunset. His hands were clasped, his hair silvered, his eyes hollow and kind. "If you're watching this," his voice began, low and uneven, "then I failed in the only way that ever mattered. I should have told the truth sooner." I heard someone gasp. "Maybe me." He continued, "Aiden's death wasn't Eliza's fault. It was mine. I told him he could fish while I fixed the tractor. I thought I could watch him from the hill. I didn't see the line tangle. I didn't hear him call my name until it was too late. I ran, but the water was faster than I was. The room had gone silent, the kind of silence that presses into your skin. I saw Dylan wipe his eyes. Marisol was gripping the back of a chair, her knuckles white. Nathan's voice broke. "Eliza carried the blame for me because I let her. I was too much of a coward to confess. So I tried to rebuild what I destroyed, one person, one life, one mercy at a time. This ranch isn't penance. It's resurrection." He paused, eyes lifting toward the sky as if searching for the boy we'd both lost. "If you're here now, it's resurrection. I want my children to know this land isn't theirs to own, it's theirs to protect. Marcus, you'll hate me for this, but someday you'll understand. Money can't fix what grief breaks. Jenna, you'll see that truth doesn't need to win, it just needs to breathe. Dylan, you already know what healing looks like. You were born for it." Then he looked straight into the camera. "And Eliza, my love, I built this place for you, too. I couldn't bring him back, but I could make sure his name meant something more than loss. Forgive me not for lying, but for taking so long to tell the truth." The video ended. The light from the projector faded into darkness. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hiss of the fire. Then Theo, the boy with Down syndrome, stood up slowly. He looked at me, then at the others. "Mr. Nathan saved me," he said softly. "I almost drowned last summer, but he taught me how to swim. He said, 'No one goes under alone.'" End quote. That broke me. Tears I'd held for decades fell freely. Dylan came to me first, then Jenna, wrapping their arms around me. Across the room, Marcus still hadn't moved. His face was pale, frozen in disbelief. Arthur stood, clearing his throat. "Dr. Calloway's words make this trust legally ironclad. No one can take this land, not a corporation, not even family. It belongs to the Foundation, forever." Marcus finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "So that's it. He dies, makes a video, and we all just forgive him." I turned toward him, shaking but calm. "No, Marcus, forgiveness isn't obedience. It's surrender. It's what lets us keep living." He laughed bitterly. "That's convenient." I took a step closer. "Do you think I don't hate him sometimes? That I don't wish he'd just told me? But if hate could build anything, Marcus, we wouldn't be standing in this room." His eyes met mine, defiant. "Broken. You're choosing them over your family. No, I said softly. I'm choosing what your father died trying to give us a way to stop running from the truth. He looked around at the faces watching him. The veterans his father had fed. The women his father had sheltered. The children his father had taught to swim. His shoulders fell. The fight went out of him. Marcus stepped forward and took the USB from the table. He built all this for us. For everyone, I said. He nodded once, then turned toward the screen. Then let's make sure they see it. All of it. He pressed play again. This time, the sound of Nathan's voice filled the barn once more, steady, warm, alive. But now it wasn't confession. It was blessing. As the crowd wept, Dylan knelt near the hearth and whispered something I'll never forget. He fixed it. Mom. He really did. I looked out across the room, the faces lit by firelight. Mom. By forgiveness. For the first time in 30 years, I felt something close to peace. The wind outside had died. The storm was over. But I knew storms never truly end. They just teach you which doors to leave open. And as I turned off the projector, the last words of Nathan's letter echoed in my mind. If you're watching this, Eliza, it means you came home. Thank you. That night, the lake shimmered beneath the moon, still and endless. I walked to Aiden's cove, touched the carving of his name, and whispered into the dark. We're home now, baby. All of us. The morning after the confession, the ranch was quieter than I'd ever heard it. No hammering, no chatter. No clinking dishes, just the wind brushing through the fields. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, fragile and sacred. I stood at the porch rail, watching the fog roll off the hills. Nathan's mug still sitting beside the old rocking chair. There were dewdrops on its rim. I touched it like it might still be warm. Inside the barn, the others were already awake. Jenna was helping Marisol catalog the letters for the archive, hundreds of envelopes marked by date and dust. Dylan was outside with Theo, showing him how to feed the horses. Even Marcus was there, standing by the fence line, staring at the open horizon as if waiting for the land to speak back. He didn't notice me until I stepped closer. You didn't have to stay, I said quietly. He exhaled. I don't know where else to go. I nodded. That's how redemption works. You don't find it, you earn it. One dawn at a time. He looked at me, tired. I still think he should have told you. So do I said, but if he had, maybe this place wouldn't exist. Sometimes truth has to break something before it can save it. We stood there a long moment. Maybe this place wouldn't exist. Gold light spilling over the barn roof. The sign above the gate caught it perfectly.